just had Halloween, haven't we, chums? I know, well, as I said before, there's no need to scream. I know I look a little rough at the moment, but there's no need to go rushing back from your screen. I know, it's all very well, isn't it, when you get caught on the hop? Have you ever had that when you have to get up early and open the door to someone for a delivery or something like that, and you think, goodness, because they're now seeing you for the first time and thinking, wow, your hair looks like you've just stuck your fingers in the socket, and suddenly you realise that perhaps this is not the best image. What's interesting, what I find about Halloween and all that sort of stuff, is the way that it's now portrayed. But actually, in the Victorian era, and in particular with royals, they weren't, well, how can I put it? Well, let me explain. Hi, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today. As ever, welcome one and all brand new subscribers. It's a funny thing, I've filmed in many theatres. Sorry, we'll have a wave. I've filmed in many theatres and worked in many theatres up and down the United Kingdom, and they all have ghost stories. Oh yes, And when you think about it, my theory on this is that I think ghosts, particularly spirits, whatever you want to call them, go back to a happy place. And if you're a performer and you say you did well on that particular stage or that theatre, then that would be the case. I remember being in the theatre during the daytime of the North Pier Theatre in Blackpool, and I did hear these footsteps walking across the stage, and it was a brilliantly bright, beautiful sunny day outside, and the guy that I was with was just going to get the sheet music, and I thought he'd come back. Turns out this was the ghost. And this, and this is like sort of the moment in the day, and you think, and there were just like house lights, little hanging bulbs down and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, I mean, was I frightened? Yeah, absolutely. Well, afterwards I thought, yeah, I'm not keen on being in here. Even when he came back, I thought, you better not leave me here. So clinging on to him like glue, But behind the scenes in the Victorian era, this was a totally different thing. Now, one of the most haunted theatres in London is the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. And this is because there's been a theatre on that site ever since the 1700s. And I mentioned this to you briefly before that. What's interesting about that theatre, because it's been there so long and there's been so many spooky coincidences and doors banging and chills going across the auditorium and, lights going out. I mean, I was talking to the wonderful actress Bonnie Langford, and she's currently starring, by the way, a very good friend of mine, and she was currently starring in the Paddington the Musical at the Savoy Theatre. And one day we were just stood on the stage of the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, and she said to me, oh, I've seen the ghost here. And I said, no. She said, well, I was performing. And I said, no, honestly. And she said she was on the stage. It was a big birthday gala for the late Queen Mother. And she looked into the far corner, and as she was doing her song and everything like that, she said she saw this Victorian gentleman appear in the far corner. And I said, didn't you stop? And she said, at first I thought, is it part dress up? Is he part of the show? Is this going to, was it a surprise for the royal party? She said she didn't know, so she just carried on. And it's interesting because, I said afterwards, oh, absolutely, terrified, she said, but at the time you just move on. What's interesting is, though, the Victorians didn't play up to this particular remit at all. According to an excellent source that I have, a theatre historian, basically the Victorians didn't want you to know about, say, the ghosts at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, simply because they think it would put patrons off. Now we have these open nights and you're sitting there with your torch and there you are looking at things and all that sort of stuff. Oh, no. Back in the day, they thought this was very bad. And apparently the late Queen Victoria would never attend anywhere if she thought this particular place had some spirit feeling. And people had to go in advance, the sort of people I mean, to make sure that this was, moved away. So while she didn't mind the Royal Opera House, for instance, which also apparently has a lot of ghosts, she wasn't too keen on being in there because she knew that this was the case. And really, the only way that these people, particularly the royals, felt secure, and this is the difference for you and I, for instance, you see, well, the bottom line is that, when you're there, you've got ladies in waiting and they were never going to leave you. And apparently Queen Victoria was so paranoid about this that even the ladies in waiting had to go into her private accommodation, you know what I'm saying, at the interval, because she was so convinced something bad might happen if she was in such a haunted place. And that's the reason why I wanted to share that with you today, because when you think about it now, as I said, if there's a place haunted, they'll have the haunted night, won't they? And you could come in and stay the night and see, can you meet the ghosts or hear the ghosts or whatever. Back in Victorian and Edwardian England, this was frowned upon. It was only in the latter part of the 19th century, going into this century now, that it's really taken off. I don't know about you, but even just talking about it, I feel a bit spine tingling. Do you know what I mean? Neil Sean, Kensington, London.